Now this is fascinating. So you can see the change in the world from the top of the mountain.
Knowing
that the golf course in Kansas is probably one of the contributing factors to that.
Yeah, the lawn mowing and the chemicals and all that stuff, and so. But yeah, on the glaciers of the Himalaya are shrinking at a rapid rate, and the cryosphere, which is Latin for ice, the world of ice, and it includes permafrost, the glaciers, pack ice, sea ice. Ice sheets in Antarctica. It's changing quite rapidly, and when you're out there and climbing on those things, you see that change firsthand, and it's pretty alarming.
Wow. So will that make it easier or harder to climb?
It'll probably make it harder. So some things will be easier, but for instance, when we were there, we were looking at archival pictures taken in 1924 from the expedition, and then we got to the same place, and the glaciers are non-existent in certain cases, and then they've shrunk. So the mass where they were at, they've decreased by a tremendous amount.
Well, so that's a lot to take away from a trip like that.
Yeah, you come back and you're like, wow, the glaciers are melting.
Right. So why aren't you some big climate change maniac?
Well, I'm always. I mean, it's part of my. I like to talk about it and I study it. And I was just at Everest setting up cameras to monitor the change and looking at pictures that were taken 50 years ago and then now 50 years on, and it's amazing that some of them are half the size, especially glaciers that have a southern exposure. So is it a result of drought, which means less moisture landing on the glaciers, or is it heat, or is it a combination of both those factors? So very important to understand, and how is it going to affect the populations of China and India, because you have a fifth of the world's population receives water from the Himalaya. So the 8,000 glaciers that are there in the Himalaya are the water towers for these very important populations.
Right. So they may want to look into that.
Yeah, they're disappearing, and so we need water.
Right.
So.
Well, I find this fascinating because here's a case where you're not a scientist per se, but this is not just anecdotal information. This is hardcore information that people need to be looking at.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. When I was in Nepal and India this past in 2008, I was studying glaciers in India, and then again this spring in Nepal, and the population there, this whole climate gate and climate change is a big hoax. It's not even part of their discussion. So I see it in that we have a few very vocal, well-funded people that are out there spreading disinformation, and they're not going to win the war, but they're going to prolong the battle, and there's probably a monetary incentive for them to do that. Where, as I see it, is we need to accept the fact, look at the problem, and then see what we can do as humans to mitigate that, and how we can plan for the future. 200 years from now, you and I are not going to be here. We've got another 40 years, but what is our legacy going to be in the next 40 years? Are we just going to kick around and drink together, or are we going to make change? And I mean, you're an agent of change. You've got a voice, people listen to you, and we're in the same boat. So we're making change by enjoying our beer here on the
I like that. If we can do it one drink at a time, I think we're doing something quite good. So I have an idea, actually, and that is a sequel to The Wildest Dream. You take Al Gore up Everest for an inconvenient dream. Oh. And we see him summit Everest, and you show him everything you've seen. Can you do that? Can you make anybody a mountain climber?
You could.
Could you make me a mountain climber?
Sure.
Yeah?
Al Gore has climbed Mount Rainier, so.
Has he really?
Yeah, he has, when he was still vice president, so.
That was before the Portland trip, apparently.
Yeah.
There's one happy ending. Okay.
He needed a little sustenance. But, we have an innate ability to climb. You look at children, and they climb up trees at age 3, and they stop climbing when the parents are like, no, don't climb. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. And of course, most children, it's like, Mom says no, it must be good, so I'm going to do it more.
And I heard that, and I just thought I shouldn't climb. But so you should actually encourage your kids to get out there, because falling is part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and when you have a rope and a safety net there, and you use the equipment right, then it's good. But I mean, as you know, one of the great challenges we as a nation face is that we're not as engaged in the world, and I see that in an intellectual sense, because we're falling behind in the sciences, and we are the most innovative country in the world. We have 8 of the 10 best universities as the metric of PhDs and patents awarded, And we have this tremendous capability, and it's tied to being active, to being outdoors, and to allowing yourself to take it all in. And we're becoming lazy. Life is now Xbox and Wii, and it's takeout pizza. And so when we think about what life was like 200 years ago here in Seattle, King County, and it was very different. I mean, if you didn't collect wood for the winter, you were hooped. And so we've taken all that away, and so now we have to address that as humans. And the next big challenge isn't going to be the lion that's going to eat us out on the savannah. It's not going to be these threats that we saw that are now mythical, the wolf and all those things, but rather it's our own ability to be as smart as we are and to have over-engineered, and so we live longer, we have more people, and so the big enemy, it's not some animal out there, it's ourselves, because we live on a very small planet. We only have one planet, and it's a closed sphere, and once we pollute it to the extent that we can't live there, we really need to be aware of it. And in our lifetime, we're living at the very apex of this carbon orgy, so to say. When we have everything we want, plastics, cars, vehicles, and we never give a second thought to it, but it's finite. And what are we going to leave to generations? Chief Seattle, who said we need to plan 7 generations out. And so, I mean, there's someone that was really a deep thinker that was never given due in his time, but now if we take his lessons and apply it, there's things that will make our planet better going forward.
Oh, I love that, and tie it into Seattle too. That's
yeah,
very nice.
He's a good guy.
Now, you are raising 3 adopted kids.
Yeah.
3 kids that you've adopted, and you have them. And I love. There's a part in the movie where you're talking about going to Everest, and you show them the old 1924 gear that you're going to put on, and the mom asks, what do you think of that? And he essentially says, I wouldn't go climb Everest.
Isaac. Yeah, he's 14. I wouldn't climb Everest. It's like the best line in the movie.
Right. He's having no part of that.
Yeah.
Now, but do you get them outdoors? Do you make sure your kids are extra active?
Yeah, we go out and we ski. They're in cross country, and so there's a chance to get them out there, and so they appreciate the outdoors. And there's a real benefit to going out and exploring. You probably remember it as a kid. Just your backyard was this great unexplored wilderness, and you would go down into the creek and you'd catch crickets and look at pollywogs, and you'd learn about all this stuff.
This is the life I wanted to have. I grew up in New York City, so I walked out the back door and walked through crack houses.
But you had some. Was there a connection to nature? Did you see anything in there?
Nope.
So you came out to Seattle.
I did.
Oh, okay.
And I was actually shocked.
Yeah.
I love Seattle because now I'm close to nature without actually having to be in it.
Yeah, you can go out there and you go for a hike and you can enjoy it. And, But bringing nature to inner city environments is very important, because going out there allows free association with the mind. You have to look at risks. So, okay, there's a snake there. Well, we're programmed to not like snakes, but you still want to pick up a snake as a kid. Is that a poisonous snake? So all these things that when you plug in an Xbox and you look at Grand Theft Auto, you're driving around and driving through crack houses.
That's right.
As a kid that's growing up in Wyoming.
As a kid growing up in Wyoming, you don't. That's
no. I mean, you go out.
About.
Yeah, you get a 22 and you shoot gophers.
And that is a necessary skill for post-apocalyptic society.
Well, they want bigger rifles. But
That's right. There you go. So if you're raising kids, is mountain climbing, do you think that's something we should be actually giving our kids? Is that important?
Not necessarily mountain climbing, but I would say hiking in the woods and getting outdoors, because humans, we need the equivalent of walking 4 miles a day for our metabolism to process the food that we take in. And the food we take in now is very high calorie food, the salts and the fats and the sweets. So those 3 that we didn't really have, those were treats back in the day. Right. We were hunter-gatherers and pastoralists, and then small-scale agriculturalists. So we didn't have these treats. I mean, ice cream used to be, in my grandmother's time, it was a big deal. It was 4th of July, they'd crank it, and they would save the heavy cream. And I mean, now it's like, oh, my second ice cream cone today. What flavor?
Right. Cherry Garcia or caramel cone? I don't know.
But getting kids outside is going to be a great way to they learn about themselves, and the adversary isn't another human. If they're going out with a pair of them walking in the woods and they get scared, they have to team together and communicate better. So it's something that will help people out, help children become good adults.
Oh, I like that. Now, if people want to know more about mountain climbing, are there books or movies they can see in addition to The Wildest Dream? Opening at the
Probably
Pacific Science Dynamic Center.
Well, thank you very much. That's the August 6th. So, the Freedom of the Hills, which is sort of the definitive book to the climbing how-to book, is published by the Mountaineers here in Seattle. That's a great lexicon to get you started, to look at the different terminologies and what you can do. You can also sign up for a climbing class. There's indoor climbing gyms. A lot of communities have outdoor boulders. So anyone, regardless of your age, you can go climb on them, whereas a jungle gym, kids get bored of them by the second or third grade, and they're dangerous. They fall through them and they get folded in half. They crack their head, they get swollen lips. And the climbing boulder, you go up it and you realize, okay, I'm going to fall off. So you become cat-like, and then you fall off appropriately. You land on your feet. So it's a good thing. So there's no place you can't learn to climb in the United States. So find it, go to the gym, whether you're in Florida or here in Seattle.
Okay. I was going to say for myself two movies that I'd recommend. One is the movie Himalaya, which is not about going up the mountains, but coming down the mountains and seeing that culture from a very different perspective. And I have to say, I don't know how climbers feel about it, but the movie The Eiger Sanction with Clint Eastwood.
Hands down the best climbing movie.
Yeah, it's just a wonderful film. Oh, it does stand up for climbers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. It's authentic. It's real. Everyone, Clint. Yeah, I mean, it was like I saw the complete 36 discs of Clint Eastwood, and it's like, oh, man. So, Christmas wish list. But the Eiger Sanction is real. Everyone's like, oh, it's hands down the best one. So, when you look at some of the other ones, that they're just
forget that whole Touching the Void documentary.
Touching the Void is very real. That is a very that is true and authentic, and there's but the Sylvester Stallone one, what was the name of that? Cliffhanger with the bolt guns. I mean, turn the sound off, get yourself some libations, and laugh.
Climbers laugh at that film.
Oh, I mean, just the bolt gun that shoots him into the rock, and then the buckles breaking, and these climbers they're not. I mean, Sylvester's like, he's got some muscle in there, some girth, and most climbers are like skinny because you're pulling your weight up there.
Right. Stallone, you wussy.
No, I wouldn't want to run into him on the steps of Philly.
No, he's shorter than I am. Don't worry, it's okay. It's fine. Then he's old now. You're safe. Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to try my ascent of Everest.
Mount Rainier.
Mount Rainier? Should I go?
Oh.
I drove up to Paradise. Does that count?
You're halfway there. What's the elevation of Paradise? 9,000 feet?
I don't know, but that seems
it's
high
only
enough.
5,000 feet to the summit. You're more than halfway there.
Yeah.
And every day as you drive, I mean, Patrick, mark my words. Warren's it's gonna be an obsession. He's gonna drive. He's like, oh, Rainier. And so you're gonna go climb it.
I'm gonna do it.
It's happening. Yeah.
If I do it, will you come back?
Yeah.
All right.
We'll do a report from the summit.
All right. Okay. We're on. Thank you so much, Conrad Anker.
We'll see you.
Thank you.